There's something different about people who rode their bikes miles from home as children. Maybe it's the way they navigate uncertainty without panic. Maybe it's how they assess risk with quiet confidence rather than fear. Maybe it's that they possess an internal compass most people never develop. Because riding bikes miles from home alone didn't just build leg muscles and geographic knowledge, it forged a specific type of psychological resilience that experts are only now beginning to understand. And by the end of this video, you're going to see why these unsupervised childhood expeditions created some of the most adaptable people alive today. Let's start with something most people get completely wrong. Modern safety culture insists that children need constant supervision to thrive. But people who rode their bikes across town at age 8 prove that theory dead wrong. Picture yourself as a 10-year-old standing in your driveway on a Saturday morning. The sun is already warm on your shoulders. Your bike leans against the garage, chain freshly oiled, playing cards clipped to the spokes with clothespins so they clatter against the wheel like a motorcycle engine. Your mother calls from the doorway, "Be back by dinner." No cell phone, no GPS tracker, no predetermined route. Just you, your bike, and the entire day stretching ahead like an open road. You push off, wobbling slightly as you gain speed, then find your rhythm. The wind rushes past your ears. The familiar streets of your neighborhood blur past, and then you're pedaling beyond them, into territory you've only glimpsed from the car window. Your heart pounds with something between excitement and fear. You're completely, gloriously alone. Picture this. A Wednesday afternoon in late spring. You're 9 years old, and you've just convinced your parents to let you ride to the park 3 miles away. Alone. For the first time, you memorize the route at the kitchen table, tracing it on a paper map with your finger. Left on maple, right on oak, straight until the water tower. You mount your bike with trembling hands, aware that your mother is watching from the window. The first mile is familiar territory. But then you cross the invisible boundary of your known world. The houses look different here. A dog barks from behind a fence. You grip the handlebars tighter. Your internal navigation system activates for the first time. This wasn't recklessness, it was calculated exploration. You learn to hold fear and forward motion simultaneously. You discovered that uncertainty doesn't require paralysis. Every turn you successfully navigated deposited a tiny confidence increment into your psychological bank account. Psychologists call this developing an internal locus of control. But for you, it was just finding the park without getting lost. Here's what's remarkable. Your brain was building neural pathways for autonomous problem solving that many modern adults never fully develop. Today's kids often reach college without ever navigating unfamiliar territory alone. They Uber everywhere because they never learned spatial reasoning through direct experience. But you can still close your eyes and mentally map your childhood town. This wasn't privilege, it was preparation. Picture this. Summer afternoon, humidity thick as wool. You're 11 and you've taken a wrong turn somewhere. Nothing looks familiar, the sun is lower than it should be. Panic rises in your throat like carbonation. Your legs suddenly feel heavy. You stop at an intersection, scanning for landmarks, fighting the urge to cry. No one is coming to save you, no phone to call home, no GPS to redirect you. You're completely responsible for solving this problem. So you think. You backtrack to the last recognizable landmark. You ask a man mowing his lawn which way to the water tower. You piece together a solution from fragments of memory and observation. This wasn't negligence. It was stress inoculation in its purest form. You learned that disorientation isn't fatal. You discovered your own capacity to think clearly under pressure. That afternoon rewired your relationship with mistakes. Neuroscientists call this building frustration tolerance and executive function under duress. But for you, it was just figuring out how to get home before dinner. Here's what's remarkable, your brain learned that problems have solutions you can discover yourself. Modern kids often panic at the first sign of difficulty because they've been rescued too quickly. They text their parents from 2 rooms away because self-rescue was never required. But you know the specific satisfaction of solving your own crisis. This wasn't trauma, it was training. Consider this. You're 12 years old and halfway to your friend's house when your chain breaks. Then you realize your back tire is going flat. The handlebars have loosened and wobbled dangerously. Your bike is essentially disintegrating beneath you. You're 3 miles from home. You have no tools, no backup plan, no rescue available. So you improvise, you tighten the handlebars by hand. You walk the bike home, stopping every few blocks to adjust and reassess. You arrive 2 hours late, sweaty and frustrated, but you arrive, under your own power, with a problem you solve through persistence and adaptation. This wasn't poor maintenance. It was learning that systems fail and you must adapt. You learned to troubleshoot under constraints. You discovered that completion matters more than perfection. That long walk home taught you more than any classroom lecture on perseverance. Psychologists call this developing calibrated risk assessment and mechanical problem solving. But for you, it was just dealing with a broken bike. Here's what's remarkable, you internalized that setbacks require creativity, not complaints. Today's generation often stops functioning when technology fails. They can't proceed without the perfect conditions because they've rarely had to improvise solutions. But you know that most journeys require mid-course corrections. This wasn't hardship, it was capability building. Picture this. Late October afternoon, leaves crunching under your tires. You're 10 and you've heard rumors of a creek that runs behind the old industrial area. You decide to find it. You leave your bike against a tree and push through overgrown brush. The ground slopes downward. You hear water. Then you see it a hidden creek, shallow and clear, winding between concrete walls covered in graffiti and moss. You spend an hour exploring, balancing on rocks, watching water bugs skim the surface. You're completely unsupervised, completely absorbed, completely present. Your default mode network activates. Your mind wanders freely while your body navigates real physical challenges. This wasn't trespassing. It was cultivating curiosity and environmental confidence. You learned that the world contains hidden layers worth discovering. You developed the capacity for self-directed exploration without external motivation or instruction. That afternoon, you became your own adventure architect. Neuroscientists call this unstructured exploration essential for developing creativity and spatial intelligence. But for you, it was just finding the creek. Here's what's remarkable: your brain was learning to reward discovery itself, not just achievement metrics. Modern children often experience nature through organized activities with checklists and adult facilitation. They hike with GPS and predetermined destinations because autonomous wandering is considered risky. But you know the specific magic of finding something yourself. This wasn't dangerous. It was developmental. Picture this. You're 13, and you've discovered that cutting through the woods shaves 15 minutes off the ride to the baseball field. The path is narrow, bumpy, occasionally muddy. There are roots that catch your front tire, branches that scrape your arms, a steep section where you have to dismount and walk. But it's your secret route. You've memorized where the fallen log crosses the small ravine, where the trail forks and which direction leads to the back of the grocery store parking lot. You've claimed this knowledge through repeated trial and error. No one taught you this route. You built it through experience. This wasn't rebellion. It was developing spatial intelligence and route optimization skills. You learned to weigh efficiency against difficulty. You discovered that unofficial paths often offer unexpected rewards. Those woods taught you that the map is not the territory. Psychologists call this environmental mastery and independent decision-making. But for you, it was just getting to practice faster. Here's what's remarkable: you were learning to see possibilities where others see only prescribed routes. Today's kids often follow GPS instructions even when they make no intuitive sense. They trust algorithms over observation because they've never developed environmental literacy. But you can still sense when you're heading the right direction. This wasn't cutting corners, it was strategic thinking. Consider this. Early evening, clouds rolling in fast. You're 11 and you're 6 miles from home when the first drops hit. Within minutes, it's a downpour. Rain soaks through your shirt. Water streams down your face. Your hands slip on the wet handlebars. The road becomes slick and treacherous. You can barely see through the sheets of rain. But you keep pedaling. You lean forward, blinking water from your eyes, focusing on the blurry edge of the road. Your muscles burn. Your clothes cling cold against your skin. But you don't stop. You can't stop. Home is the only option, and you're the only one who can get you there. This wasn't neglect. It was physical resilience under uncomfortable conditions. You learned that discomfort and danger are different categories. You discovered your body's capacity to function when conditions are suboptimal. That ride home forged a specific toughness. Neuroscientists call this stress inoculation and emotional self-regulation during physical challenge. But for you, it was just riding home in the rain. Here's what's remarkable: you learned that you're more capable than comfortable. Modern kids often avoid mild discomfort entirely because they've been shielded from physical challenge. They request pickup for light rain because endurance was never required. But you know that most worthwhile things require pushing through resistance. This wasn't suffering. It was strengthening. Picture this. 6 o'clock on a freezing December morning. You're 12 and you've taken a paper route to earn money. 3 houses across 2 neighborhoods. You load the canvas bag across your shoulders, papers rolled and rubber banded. Your breath clouds in the dark air. Your fingers go numb after the first 10 houses. But people are counting on you. Henderson on Birch Street reads the paper with her coffee every morning. Mr. Kozlowski needs the sports section before work. You're not just delivering papers. You're holding up your end of a real economic transaction with actual consequences. Miss a day and people notice. Do it well, and you're invited to holiday parties. This isn't symbolic responsibility. It's actual obligation. This wasn't exploitation. It was learning that reliability creates trust, and trust creates community. You learn that money represents value you provide, not allowance you receive. You discovered that cold mornings are temporary but reputation is permanent. That paper route taught you more about work ethic than any career counselor. Psychologists call this developing delayed gratification and understanding consequence chains. But for you, it was just delivering papers to earn bike money. Here's what's remarkable: you understood cause and effect through lived experience, not abstract instruction. Today's teenagers often enter the workforce with no experience of actual responsibility with stakes. They've had jobs on resumes but never felt the weight of people depending on them. But you learned accountability before you learned to drive. This wasn't child labor. It was competence cultivation. Picture this. Saturday afternoon, blazing summer heat. You're 9 years old, sitting on the curb outside your friend's house. You arrived at the agreed time, but he's not home. No way to call, no way to check. You just wait. For 45 minutes, you sit there drawing patterns in the dirt with a stick, watching cars pass, thinking. Your mind wanders through boredom into something else. Creative daydreaming. Problem solving about nothing in particular. Finally, your friend appears, breathless and apologetic. His family went to lunch and he forgot. You shrug it off. The waiting was just part of the deal, no outrage. No text to complain about. Just the simple mathematics of friendship before instant communication. This wasn't wasted time. It was developing patience and comfort with uncertainty. You learned that not everything resolves immediately. You discovered that boredom is a doorway, not a problem. Those 45 minutes taught you to sit with not knowing. Neuroscientists call this building frustration tolerance and activating the default mode network. But for you, it was just waiting for your friend. Here's what's remarkable: your brain learned to generate its own entertainment, not consume endless content. Modern kids often experience a notification within seconds of any question or delay. They've never waited without distraction because phones eliminate all gaps. But you know the specific texture of time passing slowly. This wasn't inefficiency. It was mental spaciousness training. Consider this. You're 11 and you've been riding to the same basketball court all summer. Then one afternoon, older kids are there. They tell you to leave. You're caught your ritual, but they're bigger. Your heart pounds. You assess the situation, their body language, their numbers, the escape routes. You make a calculated decision. Sometimes you negotiate. Sometimes you leave and return later. Sometimes you stand your ground. No adults to mediate, no authority to appeal to. Just you reading social dynamics in real time and choosing a strategy. These micro-negotiations happened weekly. Each one sharpened your ability to read status, threat, and opportunity. This wasn't bullying. It was developing hypervigilance, social awareness, and conflict navigation. You learned to assess power dynamics without explicit instruction. You discovered that social spaces have invisible rules you must intuit. Those confrontations taught you more about human behavior than any psychology class. Psychologists call this building social intelligence and threat assessment capabilities. But for you, it was just figuring out if you could play basketball today. Here's what's remarkable: you developed sophisticated social negotiation skills through unmediated peer interaction. Today's kids often have adult referees for every social conflict. They've never had to resolve disputes without institutional intervention because mediation is always available. But you know how to read a room and adjust accordingly. This wasn't Lord of the Flies. It was social competence laboratory. Picture this. Late summer evening, the sun hanging low and orange. You're 12 and you've been at your friend's house all day. Now you're riding home alone as dusk settles. The air smells like cut grass and distant barbecue smoke. Streetlights flicker on one by one. The sky shifts from blue to purple to deep indigo. You're not rushing. You're just riding, feeling the temperature drop degree by degree, watching your neighborhood transform in the fading light. You know these streets so intimately now. Every crack in the sidewalk, every dog that barks, every shortcut through every alley. This isn't just your route home. This is your territory, your confidence, your independence made visible. You arrive as stars appear, wheeling your bike into the garage, hungry and satisfied. This wasn't aimless wandering. It was integrating all your skills into fluid mastery. You learned to move through the world with ownership and ease. You discovered that freedom and responsibility are the same thing. Those sunset rides home represented the full expression of your developing autonomy. Psychologists call this achieving environmental competence and internal locus of control. But for you, it was just riding home at dusk. Here's what's remarkable: you learned that you belong in the world, not just in supervised spaces. Modern kids often travel as passengers through their own neighborhoods. They're driven past their environment because independent movement is considered unnecessary or unsafe. But you know the specific pride of arriving under your own power. This wasn't idyllic childhood. It was competence made visible. But some experiences cut deeper. Consider the afternoon you rode to your grandmother's house to find the ambulance in the driveway. You were 10 years old. You'd pedaled 4 miles to surprise her with a drawing. Instead, you stood in the street, straddling your bike, watching paramedics carry her out on a stretcher. No parent to shield you, no warning, no preparation. Just you and reality, colliding at full speed. You followed the ambulance to the hospital on your bike, pedaling harder than you'd ever pedaled, crying and pumping your legs simultaneously. You arrived sweaty and terrified, and somehow that raw, unfiltered encounter with fragility taught you something essential. Life is precious because it's temporary. People matter because they can disappear. This imprinted a fierce appreciation for presence and time. But that clarity existed alongside something darker. Those same rides also carried you past the abandoned factory where you weren't supposed to go, past the house where the man yelled strange things from his porch, through the underpass where older kids smoked, and sometimes through rocks. You learned to scan environments, to assess threat levels, to trust your gut about which streets felt wrong. You developed a low-grade vigilance that kept you safe, but also taught you the world contains danger that won't announce itself. Some risks you took were thrilling. Others, in retrospect, were genuinely dangerous, and you navigated them alone, building instincts you still carry. This created people who hold both truths. The world is magical and requires caution. Independence is essential and comes with real risk. A capability is empowering and the stakes were always real. The freedom was glorious and sometimes you were actually too young. This complexity might be their most valuable inheritance. Let's return to that feeling of coasting down a hill at full speed, feet off the pedals, arms spread wide, trusting your balance completely. The wind roaring in your ears, the pavement blurring beneath your wheels, your stomach lifting with exhilaration and terror mixed perfectly together. That moment when you were most alive because you were most responsible for staying alive. These people carry something the modern world desperately needs. They remember what it feels like to be genuinely lost and find their own way home. They remember earning trust through demonstrated competence, not participation trophies. They remember that boredom precedes creativity, that discomfort builds capacity, that freedom requires risk, and that the best moments often happen beyond supervision. They're living proof that a resilience is built, not born. Competence comes from practice, not protection. The connection deepens through unstructured time. The best gift isn't a smooth path, but the capacity to navigate rough terrain. In a world of helicopter parenting, GPS tracking, and algorithmic guidance, they stand as evidence of another way, not perfect, not without costs, but a way that produced people who can read a map, ask strangers for directions without fear, solve problems without immediate resources, sit with uncertainty without panic, and move through the world with quiet confidence. They grew up in an era when children traveled miles from home on two wheels with nothing but their wits and a vague directive to be back by dinner. They navigated without guidance. They failed without audience. They succeeded without documentation. And somehow they learned to hold it all. The independence and the risk. The freedom and the fear. The magic of unsupervised exploration and the reality that not every ending was guaranteed to be happy. They are the last generation who knew what it meant to be unreachable and discovered they were capable anyway.